What is up, our ISP improvement season listeners? We're so glad to be back. It is me, Mike Challis, and on the other end, we have Steve Hall. Not that you need to know his second name, because hopefully you know his second name by now. And Ada, of course, if you're watching on YouTube. Steve, how's it going?
As ever, I think I said this last week, or I may mention it every single week. I don't even know at this point, but we always do these. Well, not always, but at the moment, my lower body day is landing on this day, and I have a lot of competitors who check in with me on this day too. And also, if you have a show, your competitors are checking in with you like peak week, and it's Thursday, so that we record this. So I end up going to the gym a little bit later because I have a bit more work in the morning, and then basically I'll have I've been sat here for maybe 45 minutes, just like eating my post workout and doing a bit of work, but pretty trashed because it was a lower body day and RDLs on this day as well, which are getting pretty heavy. But yeah, so I'm a bit exhausted and tired, but generally pretty good. Actually, something we'll come on to is I think I'm experiencing, and I want to say the term right, and I don't know if you agree with this, but not golfer's elbow, because apparently that's a bit of a misnomer because it's not just golfers that suffer with it, but medial elbow tendinopathy.
hmm
That's what I'm probably suffering with at the moment, which we'll talk about. But how are things on your end?
Yeah, good. And yeah, things are great. We're in the new house. So yeah, life is golden. This was the first check-in day or working from home online coaching day, so that was quite nice.
I
So
bet.
yeah, just kind of getting into the swing of things. It's been a good week.
Now all I can see from what I can see in the background is I'm like, Mike needs to get a lampshade.
I know. I tried to like put something in the background, but you can't see it unless I rotate the screen. So yeah, I've gone from one right white room to another.
Someone in the comments said something like, he's too close to the camera.
Yeah, yeah, his
And that's
head's
because
way
you're,
too close or something. I was like, oh man,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's you using the kind of, I guess the laptop, what's it called? Camera. What are they called even now? I don't even know. The camera on
Webcam?
the webcam, that's the one. Weird that, yeah, I've completely lost that term from my vocabulary for a moment. But anyway, as you progress, you'll probably end up investing in bits and pieces and leveling up, whatever. But yeah, that's the reason for
I'm definitely using
it.
you as my role model for kind of like setup in this study for sure.
Yeah, it's hard because it's your study. Oh, I guess it's your spare bedroom, isn't it? So actually, you can make it more of a study than a spare bedroom. But it looked like
Yeah.
there was actually a bed in there, right?
Oh yeah, there's a proper bed.
Yeah, nice,
Yeah,
awesome.
proper single bed. So or double
Yeah, you
bed,
can
should I
start
say?
getting some artwork up there and whatever you want, your all your
Oh yeah.
trophies. And I actually still want to get a photo of me, get one of the ones from the Netherlands printed out of winning my pro card and that, and like displaying it with my medal and whatever. But yeah, I've just been lazy about getting that done.
It's always one of those lower priorities which just it keeps getting put on the back burner because other things inevitably come up.
It's also nothing I've really like. I'm sure it's really easy, but I've never done it for someone, like printing out a high quality photo and then trying to like get a frame that can frame it and also get the medal in there nicely. So I'm like, oh, it's going to take me time researching it and doing it all. And it's like, yeah, definitely a low priority for me. But yeah, for
Yeah.
you, maybe a little bit of hanging some artwork in there wouldn't be the worst thing.
Definitely, but I keep thinking this, one of like the top priorities, because at the moment I've got no table and chairs, no sofa, no nothing. I'm watching Naruto on the floor of the living room at the moment. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
not ideal. Yeah,
we've
you
got to get
definitely
the
need to get a
essentials in.
sofa. Yeah. And eventually, I
Yeah,
guess,
exactly.
well, it depends what you want to do, but a TV at some point or a bigger screen of some
Yeah, I
kind
mean
might be nice.
the TV will come, but again, that's like a lower priority because I can just watch stuff on my laptop, so I'm not like urgently in need of a TV at the moment.
Yeah, it's just nice at least when I think about it, of an evening, sitting back on the sofa, putting something on the TV, it's quite nice. And also separating, at least I find this, separating kind of work area or thing from relaxation thing. So if you do your work on your laptop and then you try and relax on it, it's like, oh, it's so easy to also navigate towards emails or whatever it might be. So it's kind of nice to separate them sometimes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely that sort of person. I like to have, a room for work, and then when you go away from it, it's like, this is my wind down time now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, it might be interesting, I guess, for the listeners and also for you. I don't think I've ever experienced golfer's elbow or the tendinopathy, and yeah, it's annoying. What can I say? And I'm pretty certain that it's come about from. It hurts most during pulling, obviously. That's what you'd expect. And I think it's just an overuse thing, basically. I was trying to think. I haven't had a proper deload since peak week from last year. My most obvious deload was the Maldives, but I still trained hard out there and multiple times. So it wasn't like I didn't really give anything a break. And I've just been hoping I'm robotic and rubber magic and I'm not going to break, but this might be a bit of a sign of something. Unfortunately, otherwise, like muscles feel recovered. I systemically feel recovered and motivated to train, but it's just like, I think I'm going to, and we'll discuss it. I'd love your thoughts on it. I think I'm going to have to modify my pulling. I don't think I'll need to modify anything else, but pulling and biceps, I think those things, finding ones that put less strain on that, I think is going to be wise. But yeah, I don't know if it's something you commonly see with kind of bodybuilders and what your thoughts are surrounding it.
It's definitely the lesser. I think it's probably more common in bodybuilders. If I was to take all patients on average and all injuries on average, it's definitely the lesser common injury of the elbow compared to what people know as tennis elbow. It's definitely the more common. But do you get it with all pulling movements?
Pretty much. Like I can feel it even if I'm just gripping. So like I was doing RDLs today, I can feel it. If I pick up a weight plate, I can feel it.
Mm.
Sometimes like when I'm lying down in bed, I'm like, I can feel it. Like it's just a bit of a radiating discomfort on that like inner portion right by the elbow. So it's definitely those tendons of gripping that's kind of been the issue there.
Because there's lots of different things when it comes to tendon and what's driving that tendinopathy. So, you know, in something like this, it could be that there is an element of, just like you said, overuse, fatigue. Like we've just been, you've been training hard for a long time. There's lots of isometric work going on through the forearms when you're gripping, and so that tendon's just become overloaded through all of that. Um, and you can kind of go about it in a few different ways. You can either modify, and through those modifications, if those modifications are working really well, there could be the possibility that it just resolves when it's being offloaded in a good way. But if it's not resolving, then again, more of a general deload might be needed. And then in conjunction with that, and I don't think this is necessarily the case with you, but then you might also want to consider more some specific rehab remedial work if there was like either a specific weakness or a specific dysfunction of some sort in some sort of way. So, are you getting it in both arms?
Yes, but worse in my right. And yeah, exactly what you said there is what I was thinking was if I it kind of started coming up maybe just over a week ago, just before our London seminar. It started flagging up a little bit, and it hasn't really got much worse, maybe a little worse. But basically, I think the time it heals is when I'm pushing, doing legs, and then when I go to pull, it feels okay. But then the next day, it's a little worse. So I know it's the pull session that's doing it. And I have a feeling it's just because I'm getting very aggressive with length and partials, and using Versagrips is probably putting a lot of therefore strain through those tendons. So I was kind of thinking two things: was either go to a bit more of a full ROM and or And maybe it's a bit of a mix. It's like not everything needs to go full ROM, but maybe some will, and I'll mix it up a little bit. And then also using the Versagrips maybe less, not for everything, and that might just resolve it without having to reduce actual volume.
Sometimes, honestly, just little tweaks like that, it just nips it in the bud. And you might be aware of it for, a couple of weeks. There might be, you've got some awareness of it. But then after a couple of weeks, it just fades into nothing. And if that allows you to keep training without needing to deload, it's a win, really.
Yeah, totally. The weird thing is, because I've never experienced it before, like actually poking my like elbow in there, like it's so sore, and it's actually really nice pushing it. It's like, oh, that's such a relief. It's like my, but so it's such a. I think it is the length and partials and just having been aggressive with it. Also, like you said, not having deloaded like properly for a while, so the tendons probably haven't had that rest that they normally would get. They need a bit more time, right? And then as I'm getting heavier and deeper into my off season, hitting PRs, I'm just putting more through it that it hadn't experienced. So yeah, I think I love that chat around the modifications and things that we can do. And next week, after I've kind of made some of those, we can talk about it a little bit more and see what happens. But yeah, like you said, I think the rehab work in terms of doing maybe some flexion and kind of strengthening that, and maybe even some pronation and stuff, I probably don't need to. Like, I don't think it's because of that. I think it is more of just overuse, and it'll just calm down if I pull away from it for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And can't remember what I was going to say. Um, oh, that was it.
Oh, go on.
So sometimes tendons can be tricky to manage because they don't always give you feedback in the moment. Sometimes they might do. Sometimes you might get discomfort, but then maybe a few hours later or the next day, that's when they really tell you like, they're more sore today. So like you were saying, maybe the next day after a pull session, you're like, they're notably a bit more, there's more discomfort. So for some people, that's quite tricky because they don't know how to manage it in the moment, but you've just got to be cognizant of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, we talked about sometimes you just learn in hindsight how to manage situations better. It's somewhat similar to that. Something I thought might be interesting for you to talk about for this week was I saw on your story, and we'd obviously discussed it within your check-ins, was the kind of plateau that you'd been experiencing, and not struggle, it might sound like the wrong word, but like the battle you've had with the pendulums. But this week it kind of jumped up. So I think it's just a worthwhile story for the listeners.
Yeah, and do you know what? I was kind of looking back after I posted that, and I think it'd been plateaued for 4 weeks. So I think it might have been around, I can't even remember actually, but I looked back and it was, I was using like 50 kilos on the pendulum, and I got like 11 or 12 reps, and I made a bit of a bigger jump. I went from 50 to 55, which, it's not maybe the biggest of jumps, but compared to like maybe micro loading, it's a slightly bigger jump. And 10%. I kind of went down to like 55 for 10. And then for like 3 weeks solid, it was just same reps. And then I got my counting slightly wrong last week. So it was kind of like a 9. And then this week went in there and I beat it. And I think the takeaway from that was just like, hey, matching performance is still productive, and if you just hang in there, it will come, and it's just about staying persistent. And I think it really also resonates with a lot of things that you've said in the past about how you can adapt to training at a high intensity, and also about how matching performance is still really productive. So yeah, it was just, it was really good. It was a good experience.
I'm assuming, just to kind of clarify for the people listening, when you were saying matching performance, that was also at like 0 RAR, basically.
Like, yeah.
Every time.
So, like, it was pretty much a 0 RAR because I wouldn't have come back up on the next rep. There was no way.
Yeah. It's funny because I posted a carousel just the other day, and I talked about if you're not progressing, like you're not growing. And I think some people took that for me to say at form as if I was saying you have to be progressing every single session. And that's absolutely not what I was saying. And I also understand that when you hit a PR and you progressively overload from into new territory, that's a sign that you've grown. It's not the kind of ignition for growth. So you'd been doing all the work to grow, and then the kind of PR that you hit, the extra rep you got, was a sign that you've adapted now and you've probably grown. But yeah, Mike. So it's the point I was making with the kind of carousel was, in the long run, you need to see performance improving, because if you're just hitting the same reps, same load, same form, weeks, months, years, like you are not growing, because now that's no longer meeting thresholds for stimulus, for the sufficient stress. So anyway, I think your experience there is a really good one. It's exactly as we spoke about last week, and I think I released that reel where I talked about you can be training like at your limits for weeks upon weeks, and you might not add a rep or add a bit of load, and your form might be the same. I mean, theoretically, you're doing it under high levels of fatigue, so that's even a performance improvement in some regards, the fact you can do it under high levels of fatigue. But eventually, it should show itself, or we'd have had to have deloaded and pulled back. But if you know you're pushing your recovery limits too, then it's not more that you needed in that situation. It's just being patient, similar to, you know, you're doing the right things for a calorie deficit. You're hungry, you're doing the right things in terms of eating plenty of fruit and veg, you're hitting your protein, you're doing your cardio steps, you know you're in a deficit, like you know you are, but the scale might not always show it until like a couple of weeks in future, and sometimes it's just how it goes. You see that whoosh. So yeah, I thought it was a great example of that you saw.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just to add to that as well, we knew we could have more confidence as well because everything else in the training was going well. Like, even the other exercises within that session, they were progressing, all the other exercises were progressing well. So we knew it was just that one movement, just got to keep staying at it. It will show itself eventually.
That's something I've definitely learned as I've got more advanced and moved away from just some like textbook thinking, where I used to go through mesocycles, Mike, and I'm sure you had this, where literally every week I would add one rep, one rep, one rep, and then I'd be adding volume, and then I'd just be like, oh yeah, I'm at like 1-0 RAR, I'll deload, and then I'd rotate an exercise in, and then I'd add a rep, add a rep, add a rep. And it's like, man, was I ever really pushing myself that hard? Was I really stimulating growth the best? Probably not. And as I've done this longer and realized, hey, you really have to push yourself hard. It's okay to repeat performance and keep movements in for a long time. Like slight deviances in your performance is just fine. So long as, obviously, you mentioned there you lost a rep, but that's not like, oh my God, I lost a rep, like it's terrible. Obviously, you have to look at the context of the entire program. It was one exercise, it's only a rep. It's not that scary. Could have happened for a multitude of reasons. And I have an example of that. I was doing incline pressing, and I went up in load. The next, it was like 32.5 kilos. The next was 35. So quite a significant jump up in load. And I managed to, I think, match reps. I'm pretty sure I matched reps. If anything, I may even have beaten my reps, which is wild because it was like a big load increase as well. But then this week, I dropped like a couple of reps. And then the others, I dropped like a rep on each set. And I was just like, yeah, like previous me would have been like, oh my God, clearly I'm fatigued. That's like a red flag, whatever. But it's like everything else is going well. I didn't feel overly fatigued. It's probably just one of those things. And also last week, I saw a bit of an almost inappropriate jump in performance. And maybe I over-egged it a little bit too. I got a bit greedy. So it's like, that also happened. And then also I had a movement before it. I did increase the load, and that performance change and fatigue dynamics might have impacted later things in the session. So it's just not getting too caught up in, similar to like not getting too caught up in a single weigh-in in a week. Don't get too caught up in a single kind of change in performance within your session, so long as it's not kind of like completely wild and there's other signs of things being wrong. Like, I don't know, I tore my pec. Clear, obvious errors.
Yeah, I was just thinking of exactly the same example of the scale weight, and just also about not getting too reactive. It's like, okay, this has happened, but you take a step back and view the broader context and, in relation to all these other things. And I think that's what you've just got to do. And like you said, also as part of that experience gives you more confidence to, hang in there or make a better decision, etc. Yeah, it's very, I think that's very much the approach we need to take.
Well, yeah. Is there anything else, training, lifestyle, diet wise, that's new for you this week?
Nothing, nothing new. Um, yeah, nothing new on my end. It was more actually, I was really keen to ask you actually more than anything about because you went away to Bath this
Oh, yeah, I
weekend.
did.
And I
Completely
again,
forgot.
like similar to our chat about the Maldives, I'd be really interested to like hear how it went and what did you get up to? How did you manage yourself and all of those things?
Yeah, so basically, I worked over the last May bank holiday, and Charlotte always gets really upset with me that I work bank holidays because she has them off. The awful thing I also did, awful. Like, I don't think it's awful, but this happens when anyone who's self employed, especially if you're an online coach, you'll kind of get it. You're kind of always on the clock. But I had people competing on the weekend, basically. Both days I had people competing. So I was very much. Oh, sorry. And we had our seminar on the Sunday, and I had people competing over the weekend. So I was really just working the entire weekend. So I didn't really give Charlotte. Typically, that's when we hang out most, is on the weekend. So I was like, right, we'll go away for the weekend so I can we can really separate ourselves from work and concentrate on kind of one another. And the weather was looking nice, and Bath is not too far away at all from London. From us, like door to door, it's like 2 hours. So it's like an hour to St. Pancras, and then from St. Pancras or King's Cross, I can't remember even where we went from. I think St. Pancras, it's like an hour. Bath is beautiful. I think it's like one of the spa towns. So like Cheltenham, St. Albans, I can't think what other ones come to mind, but it's a really nice historic, beautiful. And obviously they have the Roman baths that are there and everything. We've been there before, and I've been there a number of times actually, because did a seminar with JPS there. I've been to a seminar myself there when Brad Schoenfeld, James Krieger, Brett Contreras, a bunch of people came over for that, and that and Alan Aragon. That was fantastic. But yeah, I love Bath. It's a really nice city. I would love to live there, but the prices are probably just as bad as
Yeah,
London.
they are.
It's very expensive. So yeah, anyway, so we're just like, hey, let's go there. Let's stay overnight. So we just stayed in a travel lodge because, man, I don't know if it's just because we were looking last minute, but that was like nearly £200 for a night in a travel lodge, and we had to pay 20 quid to have Ada with us as well. But hey, this still, it
20
was
quid.
expensive for a
Yeah.
travel lodge. It's kind of like, I don't know, 3-star hotel. It's nothing special. They didn't even have, and to Charlotte's disdain, a hairdryer. Not something I have to worry about, but she's like, how do they not even have a hairdryer? Anyway, it was just like to sleep in. We weren't spending time in there, so it's absolutely fine. But man, it's expensive. Anyway, so did that, and so we left Saturday kind of afternoon, and then had Sunday there. So Sunday's my rest day, so that's great because I don't even have to think about training, and we just had the whole day of just like wandering and walking around the city. And yeah, it's just good that I'm now really in a position where that doesn't even phase me or stress me in regards to like managing nutrition. It's just not a problem at all. And so, like, I guess if I was nearer to have just competed, actually, I mean, we did it in London, in New York, didn't we? Like, even post show, I was immediately having to like free ball and have multiple meals out. It's just the same approach, but even easier than that. So yeah, it was just a nice break. I think I hit like 27,000 steps on this watch,
Ooh,
which
yeah,
definitely underestimates. If it was my
yeah.
Fitbit, it probably would have been over, it easily would have been over 30K steps. So it was a lot of steps. And Bath is also really hilly.
It
And
is, I was gonna say.
I had legs on Monday, but I don't seem to be impacted by like high step counts. So I have clients, if they hit like 15,000 steps, which is a lot for them, they're usually around like 10 or slightly less. They're like, their performance is down for legs. Whereas for me, it's just like, yeah, it doesn't seem to have a play a role. I don't know why, but they seem to deal with it just fine. So yeah, I don't know if you have any specific questions for me. I could probably talk through like a nutritional scenario if it was needed, like some of my thoughts and feelings going through things. Because actually, I have more regularly been sharing more like quote unquote lifestyle content. Like if
Mm,
me and Charlotte do something or if something's a bit different, just to give a bit more personality and kind of not look so one dimensional as a bodybuilder. But I had a number of clients reach out and they're like, I really enjoy that content because they're not aware of the fact that I'm even that flexible, and I don't even view it as being flexible. I'm just like, just living my life like it's just a normal thing for me. But for other people, they're like, oh, actually, Steve, I quite often like get anxiety about eating out. So I can't imagine like how do you deal with it so stress free? And I'm like, oh, this is good because they wouldn't have communicated to me if I wasn't sharing this content. And now I can open up a whole box of tools and skill sets that they can have to enjoy life more and make bodybuilding complement their life even more. Because, yeah, I hate to think that people like avoid eating out or what have you, like experiences like I just had that weekend because they don't have the skill set to be able to enjoy it and they just kind of keep themselves in their bodybuilding box.
Mm. But that's it, right? It's a skill set. It's something that even down to where every Friday night you and Charlotte have like a takeaway meal, and it's like just doing that like once a week, it just fine tunes that skill of like knowing what approximate calories might be in this meal or that meal, and you can apply it to this and that. And even just the flexibility of having something different outside of a home prepared meal, I think is really useful. So, and I also echoed that in the post that you made. I think it really shows that, hey, you can have, you know, you can really enjoy life and still be a bodybuilder, still make progress, still very much stay on track with what you need to do and your goals, yet still have a great life. And I think it just showcases that a lot. So I completely agree. The
Yeah,
only question
move.
that I had
Sorry.
was, when you were coming back, did you still take things like, protein bars with you and stuff so that if you're on the train, it kind of, sort of, yeah, made up for the bits in between?
Yeah, just to touch on your initial point there, I think that's something kind of your traditional thought of bodybuilder isn't very good at, where they're either on plan or off plan, and so they have cheat meals, and that's how they deal with life, and that's how they make it fit in. But I think better bodybuilders, the more educated and more, how do I put this, uh, like a more sensible, healthy approach to bodybuilding that more people should take, I think, is being able to be on plan even when you can't eat to your normal plan. And it's just like, how do you fit it into that? Whether or not that is, hey, calorie budgeting and you save some calories, or you kind of underspend one day to spend more the other day, or you fit it into your calories, you look at the menu ahead of time and you make wise choices, so on and so forth. Like, it's just having that. And also, I do want to bring this one thing up. I think bodybuilders sometimes aren't good at this. Is me and Charlotte discuss going out to eat on the Saturday night at this restaurant, and we'd also discuss getting gelato afterwards because freaking gelato, right?
Yeah.
And on the menu, it was like a tapas type of Mexican kind of had various tacos and quesadillas and so on and so forth, and it said basically 3 small plates per person is pretty normal. And so I was in my head, I was like, 3 sounds like quite a lot. And I want to make sure I have like sufficient calories for gelato afterwards. And Charlotte was like, oh, no, it says 3 small plates. Like, we should do 3 each. And so I did 3 and it came out. And I was like, this is not within the calories I budgeted for. It was a good amount of food and it was fucking great. Like, it was so nice. And I helped, ChatGPT helped me guesstimate it, and it came out to like 1,500. I was like, yeah, I think that's pretty close to where I was thinking, and I was really only budgeting for about 1,000. So one, it was a kind of a good lesson of my intuition to stick to my guns of maybe just having the 2 there versus going for the 3. And then I was in a situation where I was like, man, in my head, I'd sold myself on having gelato afterwards, and I wanted to have that. And I was just like, Steve, you can have it tomorrow. You don't have to have it tonight. You don't have to be greedy. You're nice and full from that meal. And so I was just like, Charlotte, I don't really want to have gelato tonight. It doesn't really like align with what I want to do. And she was just like, totally fine with me. And so I just know that people hearing that, there will be some people who'll be like, oh, like I'd struggle to not overindulge and go and have the dessert, especially having said you were going to. It's just having that skill set of being like, hey, can have it tomorrow. And we did have it the next day. Like, and that was fine. So I was proud of myself for that, because I do think even I was like, oh, man, like I want to have the gelato. Maybe I'll just overindulge, but I don't personally like too much going way over my calories one day and having to pull back other days. It just starts that slight pendulum swing of maybe slightly disordered eating where you do overindulge on highly palatable, less kind of health promoting foods, and then you kind of restrict, and it just, I don't think it puts you on the most healthy relationship with food or feeling the best and performing the best in the gym too. So I wanted to give that example because I thought it was, don't know, I found it kind of like challenging in the moment. I was like, oh, that's quite like, maybe people will find that interesting. So yeah, I don't know if that brings up any thoughts for you.
Tons. And I think that was so valuable. So I'm really glad that you did bring it up, because I think that just highlights cognitive or psychological flexibility, where you had this intention in your mind, you wanted to have gelato, life happened and you weren't able to have that. But it was like, hey, Steve, like you said, it's fine. I'll have gelato tomorrow. And do you know what? Even if you couldn't have had gelato tomorrow and you're like, I'm just going to have to wait until I come back next time or something, it's still, going to be there, or it wouldn't be the end of the world. And I think also, I sometimes think that's why people also overeat in a buffet, because they see all this food and they think, oh, I have to have it all right now. When, if they're at a all-inclusive hotel or something, it's like, hey, it's probably going to be there tomorrow. You don't have to stress. You can just have, one thing today, and then the next morning you can have the other thing. You don't have to have it all. And also, in combination with that, it's like you often talk about sometimes just be okay with leaving stuff on your plate, and it's like, hey, if you're full, you don't have to finish it all off and be stuffed. You can leave stuff on your plate.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a particular disdain for buffets. I don't enjoy them for that reason, because I think they just do encourage overeating,
Mm.
and some people really struggle to set boundaries with that. And when we were in the Maldives, obviously, we had the breakfast buffets, and so I just found a strategy of like, hey, I'm gonna have one like indulgent item, but the rest is very much like on plan. And then it felt flexible enough and unrestricted enough to really enjoy and embrace it without being so flexible that I regretted overdoing it. So yeah, that's a great example with the buffet there. And just going in with a plan, I think, really helps. Just generally going in with a plan really helps. And so to your other question in terms of protein bars and things like this, so yeah, I always travel with protein bars. For me, it's like an absolute no-brainer to take some protein bars, some sachets of protein. So that actually helped me. I had a kind of big sachet of protein before we went out for dinner on the Friday as well, because then it just opened up flexibility, because Charlotte's vegan, and so I might end up eating a fairly vegan meal, and therefore the protein be a bit lower. So it just opens up a bit of room and flexibility for me. And then the next day we went out for a vegan breakfast, which, and again, pretty pitiful in protein, and I have a high protein intake. So after that, I had already said to Charlotte, hey, after this, at some point, I want to go to a supermarket and just get like a big tub of Greek yogurt. So I just got a tub of skyr and a punnet of blueberries and just ate that just after we'd had the buffet at that point. And so that just put me all in the right direction. And then, yeah, we just had a look at some of the dog-friendly restaurants for dinner, and one of them, and I was like, hey, they have fajitas here. Fajitas are super great bodybuilding like food, especially if you customize it a little bit, which I did do. And in that scenario, again, like I would have loved to have had the works of like the cheese, the sour cream, or the guacamole, everything. But I was like, if I want to have gelato afterwards, I need to just be smart here and just play my cards right. And so I was just like, hey, I just said to them, can you modify this to bring me out just salsa instead of cheese and sour cream? That saved me like 200 calories, which I could then put towards what I wanted. And that was the gelato afterwards. And I think a lot of people in that scenario, they just go all in on everything. And potentially that weekend, I could have easily been thousands of calories over.
Mm-hmm.
And like my appetite's there for it. And I think that's very normal for people to have a sufficient appetite for like highly palatable, like eating all your meals out. Of course, it's super easy to overindulge and go overboard. Most meals out you're going to find are around 1,000 calories, potentially plus. So it's a very easy thing to do. So having some kind of foresight planning, being okay with like leaving things or modifying things and budgeting smartly, yeah, allows you to be very goal driven and really enjoy it for what it is. So yeah, it was nice to kind of use those skill sets and be fine with it
Yeah.
all. Like it didn't feel like I was sacrificing anything.
And I think like two thoughts like really screamed out at me there with what you were saying. And it was one of them was how you, just by having things in moderation, you enjoyed everything. So you were able to have like vegan breakfast, then you were able to have like, you had that skyr yogurt, then you had fajitas and gelato, and you were able to enjoy all of that. But you obviously, you moderated the fajitas, whereas, someone might have potentially deprive themselves of the vegan breakfast, or or maybe or the gelato or something, but actually you enjoyed everything to a degree. You just moderated it, and I think that's just such a good example of just moderation, which is so much of what we're missing sometimes in, well, I was going to say this day and age maybe, but probably, it's been going on for a long time. We don't moderate things. It's absolutes, like you said. It's either we binge or we deprive, and it's like that answer is in the middle ground. And I think, and to the other point that you were saying, I think having a plan and a structure allows you to be able to enjoy that, and you can have flexibility within that. And it's that kind of term of discipline or structure creates freedom, or something of that nature. It's like discipline equals freedom, which is like Jocko Willink, but like having that structure and that discipline, it almost gives you a bit more freedom. So like, I love what you said there.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's having the ability to be dynamic with your like flexible dieting approach. This is something that I'm currently doing. He comments on these videos often, so I'm sure Ali will listen to this, but we're working on him being more flexible with his nutrition, because he was quite black and white, whereas like track and weigh everything, and then he'd get burnt out because it was too much, and then he'd end up like just completely like switching off from tracking at all because it was too much. Whereas now he's got that skill set of like, if he needs to eat mindfully and just have a mindful meal out where he's kind of cognizant of things but not tracking it, he can do that. But also he can just be less kind of he can guesstimate more often. He's happy doing that, and kind of moving between like being very strict when he can be, really on point when he can be, but when he can't be, okay with being a bit looser, and using that dimmer switch analogy of we're never like fully on and fully off. It's always like higher and lower degrees that's appropriate with the goal and the time in mind. So yeah, you might have to be at like the peak flexibility when you're on holiday, and then you are much more strict and peak strictness when you're like deep in a diet phase, for example. But you should be able to like fluctuate between these, and maybe on average in like an off season you are like in that middle kind of zone for a lot of individuals. So yeah, it was a good kind of reminder of that. Yeah.
And shout out to you, Ali, if you're listening. Keep up the good work. Do you know what? I thought of an interesting question, because I think like I would see you as a bit of a role model for for people to follow with regard to this. But in your mind, is there anyone that comes to your mind who is a great role model or example for the types of stuff that we're talking about?
Good question. I'm trying to think, who do I look to for this sort of thing? I do think the 3DMJ guys do a good job generally at talking about this sort of thing. It's definitely, they're probably the people. And Matt Ogus, as an example, when he was vlogging and everything, he kind of took me towards flexible dieting and all of that. Obviously, I think Lyle McDonald was one of the foundational kind of people who came up with the term flexible dieting, where it isn't like on or off. It is very much like a dimmer switch. But in terms of like people that share, I don't know. No one particularly comes to mind that like does similar to the way I do it. I see bodybuilders very much doing cheat meals. I see bodybuilders very much like nailing their like meal plan every day. Don't see it a ton where people are sharing like the maybe the elements that I just described there so much. I'm absolutely sure it goes on, and I do think there's probably, because ingrained in bodybuilders is that strict dialing everything in. So there's something about being like very proud about showing that side of you. But this other side, this kind of softer, more flexible side that's a bit more lifestyle, I don't think is encouraged as much. And I've also felt guilty at times to even like document some of that, because I'm like, oh, I'm being a bad bodybuilder. It's like, no, I'm not actually. I'm being a sensible bodybuilder, and this is all goal driven. It's like I said in the post, I didn't miss any training. I didn't miss any of my nutritional goals. So yeah, no, unfortunately, no one comes to mind. Maybe someone will as I think about it. But actually, and if anyone's listening and they can think of people that come to mind, please do comment them below, because I'd be very interested to see.
I think I do agree with you, though. I think the team 3GMJ crew would do a good job of it. I think we don't see it on their stories much just because they're probably not in the same situation and life circumstances. But, I can imagine if anybody was to eat out with them, they could be totally flexible and happy with it.
Like we did with Alberto, right? He got 2 salads when we went out to eat
Yeah.
in, and I say salads, they aren't what I picture of a salad. They were very like calorie dense with like nuts and what was it, cranberries and loads of protein, of course. But yeah, anyway, that was
Yeah.
good fun.
I also just wanted to make the slight related topic that sometimes you can approach injuries and modifications to the training exactly in the same way that we've been talking about with nutrition, because I really enjoyed watching one of Alberto Nunez's vlogs about when he injured his back, which I think mentioned to you at the Revive meetup, because he hurt his back doing stiff-legged deadlifts, and I thought it was so great because he was clearly, like, you could see like he was in a lot of pain. His body was kind of a little bit he was moving differently because of the pain, but he still trained, and he totally just like modified what he was doing. He was still doing some 45-degree back extensions and stuff like that, and I just thought this is just such a good example. He was just talking really calmly about the pain, the injury. He was like, yeah, I'm just going to do this movement and that movement. And I just thought, oh, this is great. And yeah, it just reminds me of how it's similar to nutrition in that sort of sense.
Yeah, there's so many, I can't think of the word, but they mirror one another very, very well. And you can use one another to analogize the other, because it is very similar to, I think about it, like the very strict bodybuilder with their training. They could be strict to a fault where they cause an injury, or if they then are injured, they can't stick to the plan and then they just give up and they're just like black and white. I'm either doing the plan or I'm not. Whereas actually the best bodybuilders can modify and they can be flexible in those situations. And that takes education, it takes experience, and it takes like an ability to think about things less binary in nature as well. So yeah, I'm sure that's a great vlog if people want to check it out. Should we get to questions though, if we've
Is there
completed our
anything
catch
on the
up?
current affairs? Is there anything on the current affairs agenda that is worth mentioning?
I only have that it was the Pittsburgh Pro this past weekend, and I haven't seen a ton from it. I just really wanted to say, like, big shout out to Terence Ruffin, Rough Diesel, for taking the classic title. He is unbelievably improved from last time I saw him on stage, and that's very evident in all his updates. And as far as I'm concerned, that's already a huge win. Like, he's clearly got carrying heaps of muscle, as conditioned as ever. His posing was on point, and to see him win that after having discussed it with him that he was going to go there and kind of look to take the title, yeah, I'm super happy for him, because he hasn't stepped on stage for a while. He's a little bit rusty in that sense. I think he said that. So that was my main, like, hey, that was pretty damn cool. I don't know if you saw much from the Pittsburgh Pro.
I'm going to be honest, I've seen none of it, so I need to catch up. And you messaged me before, at the like yesterday or something. Is like, if we talk about current affairs, you're going to have to actually keep up with current affairs. And I know, and I've failed already, but I'm going to get better. I promise.
I can't miss these because I follow these bodybuilding accounts that just flood my feed when these big events are on. So the next one, this weekend's the Arnold, right? I believe the Arnold is this weekend. So
Hasn't it already
again,
gone?
or is it another Arnold? I don't know. I don't know if it's called the Arnold or it's something. There's another big show this weekend. I can't think what it's called.
I think
I don't
the
trust you
Arnold's
if
definitely
knowing
been
if
and
it's
gone.
gone. It might be. Wait, let me. Body building show this weekend. Let's see if it's going to give me it. No, I don't want to know about the UK BFF. IFBB. What is it? What's the big show? There is a big show this weekend because Terence is going to be doing it. I'm really annoyed that I can't. You've made me question it. It's clearly not the Arnold because I know that also. I'm pretty certain it has happened. But Terence is going to be there, and then also Nick Walker's going to be there. And Nick was massively improved. And obviously there was a lot of controversy about him not having competed for a while, and he pulled out like last minute from one of them. So Yeah, where is it? New York Pro. Sorry, that's what's happening
Ah,
this
yeah,
weekend. It's the New York Pro.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I had Arnold in my head. I think just I associate bodybuilding and Arnold, and I'm just like, yeah, it's an Arnold show. But anyway, and the
That's exciting.
controversy with this show was they were joint on points. So Derek Lunsford took the win, and Nick, they were joint on points. But I think it was like, in terms of judges that had Nick first, there were more judges that had Derek first. And I quite liked, I don't know what judge talked about it, but it was basically saying how when it is tied, you then look for weaknesses. And Derek just has less weaknesses than what Nick does. And I was like, that kind of makes sense to me. And I think it is a bit of shape versus like condition and just pure mass in this
Mm.
situation. So it's like apples and oranges. What do you want to go for? But I think Nick, he's improved his legs so that they are more balanced and he is more shapely and his symmetry is better. But he's never going to be the most symmetrical and beautiful in that sense, because when you've got people like Derek, who has the tiniest waist considering his size and mass, the taper he has is just wild. But yeah, Nick, I actually commented on one of these posts from one of these bodybuilding pages I follow, because they had like some side by sides from stage. I was like, not only am I surprised with how good Nick is looking, I'm surprised how many of these shots he's beating Derek in. So as I said, it was joint points, so it was very, very close. And then I think they were all quite ahead of, like, Martin Fitzwater took third, and he wasn't really satisfied with his look. And then William Bonac came fourth, and again, he's very, very good, but he's a bit like he's an of the standard of the two guys there. So, and then Josma Munoz, I don't know what his, like, he's got a different name on, like, Terrence on Instagram, but from Spain, and yeah, he's a bit of an underdog, and he pushed Terrence for sure. So that was pretty cool. But I think
Mm.
Terrence is definitely more classic. You can't really get much more classic than Terrence for me. So yeah, I don't know if you have any other current affairs, Mike, since you brought it up.
No, I was just going to add to that last point. I don't know if I'm making this up or not, but I used to think that, or I thought I heard that the New York Pro is more leans more towards the kind of freaky bodybuilders who kind of maybe they're slightly less aesthetic, more towards freaky. And so I don't know whether that might, if they were to do another comparison of Derek Lunsford and Nick Walker, whether they might lean towards a bit more Nick Walker, or whether they're now trying to just be very, you know, um, consistent across the board in all shows. I'm not sure.
No idea. I
But
don't know if it's the same
yeah,
judging panel or anything. I don't follow it closely enough to know that level of insight, so I have no idea. But we'll see.
yeah,
Again, this is one of those things with bodybuilding. I always remind myself and my competitors of this, like different judging panel, different day. Like when there's just points between competitors, it could quite easily flip. So yeah, I'll be excited to see how Nick gets on, how Terrence gets on again. And yeah, I don't think in the UK scene, or UK in the natural bodybuilding scene, I don't think there's been any like big major shows, but we've got the WMBF.
yeah.
I've got Jake competing in the WMBF in California. I don't know if that has a specific name, I can't think, but he'll be competing there on Saturday. And then Kieran as well is going to compete in WMBF Canada, their other show. I think they only have the two, so he'll be doing that one. And so that'll be exciting to kind of see how they're getting on. And both of them are in a really good spot. So I'm excited just to see they're going to both bring an improved look to stage. And that's, again, the biggest win. And you can't really ask for much more than that.
Definitely. And when's Colin competing as well? Can't
He is
remember.
2.5 weeks out from his first show, and then he has a show in like 7 weeks or something. So he is in a great spot. I just said to him, because he's like, his check-in was like, basically, Steve, I'm dying. I laugh because I just know exactly how he's feeling. And also I have this relationship with him where he knows I'm not laughing at him. I'm like laughing with him in his knowing he's going through this pain. And so I basically just told him, I was like, you're right. Like, this is totally normal to be feeling like this because we're digging. And basically, I'm trying to get him as ready as possible to close to 100% for this show, which is an NPC natural show, actually. So they want, like, you've dialed in, basically. The other ones are OCB shows, I believe. So I was like, after this, we'll be pulling back. So as you would have seen, if people have seen my stories, I've kind of shared him on there, Colin. He's in really good condition, but he has more to come off his hamstrings, more to come off the glutes, the lower back, and he has so much size that he's holding together really well. Even his, as I said to you, even his depleted flat look is not bad, but he definitely comes to life when you pump him full of carbohydrates. So yeah, I'm excited for him. And this is, I believe, his third time competing. So he's not first timer like Kieran and Jake. He has experience doing this and he's done very well, but he's a completely different animal this year. He's never come in this condition. So yeah, I'm very excited for him. He should do well.
Yeah, because that's exactly why he came to you, wasn't it? He's never quite brought the conditioning, and so that's exactly what he hired you for, isn't it?
Well, one of the
In a
things,
sense.
yeah, for sure. He thought I could bring the best out of him, basically, and yeah, it was very obvious from our initial consultation that he has heaps of muscle, but he did not bring the condition. He's already much more conditioned than he's ever been on stage, at least from what I've seen. So he's doing tremendous because he has an awful schedule with like the times and hours he has to work as a personal trainer. He has to get up very early. He's also a new dad, so his wife is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. Obviously, he's doing his best to stay like supportive and things, but he's doing a great job of balancing everything. And yeah, I'm glad. I'll be glad once this show almost is quote unquote out the way, so we can start pulling back a little bit, so we can feel a bit more lively and to life, if that's the right call. But I think it probably will end up being where we need to go, and we won't need to dig too much extra. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see him. Yeah, bring it all to stage. He's even not even like removed body hair or anything. He still looks shredded.
You could see it so much in the story that you posted in terms of just like the like in his legs, like from his flat look to when he was filled out, like the detail through the legs was just like it was
Yeah.
very noticeable.
Yeah, he's all the way in side to front. It's that back shot I want to get gnarly and get him a
Mm,
bit more dug out. But he's classic as well. He's not even doing open. So he's going to be highly competitive within classic.
yeah. This is. And have you changed his posing for the front? Because he used to have his leg out to the side. Is that
Yeah, yeah.
changed?
Yeah, it's just like he just doesn't need to hit it like that. He can just hit it standard. He doesn't need that flare. I mean, he could hit a classic front double bicep. He just wasn't doing it, displaying it in the best way, and so he's just hitting it standard front on, legs together, because he has a small enough waist, flaring enough quads and lats to be able to just hit it without having to add too much flair there.
Yeah, yeah. But shall we get into questions now?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll ask the first one. And as ever, guys, if you do want to ask questions, there's a link in the description that can take you to the hypertrophic time chamber over on Instagram, which is where we ask for questions. So let's get to the first one here from Chevere _ building 24 has asked, minimum fat intake in the off season. My weight is 57 kilograms. I do 40 to 60 grams a day, mostly around 50.
So I think we did cover a similar question on a previous episode. I don't think it was specific to the off season, but I think we've definitely covered a similar type of question. And I mean, in terms of the minimum fat intake, again, I think we've just got to revisit the fact that there's no advantage to reducing your fat so low to try and bias carbs. I mean, it doesn't, there isn't an advantage to having more carbs versus more fats, particularly in the off season when you should be really well fed anyway. I think there is and I've forgotten it, but I think there is a kind of a level where, hey, you don't really want to be dropping below, say 30 grams of fat. And certainly for a very short period of time, you could go lower than that, but you don't want to do it for an extended period of time. And we're talking, this is in the context of, contest preparation. So certainly in the off season, in terms of healthy fat intakes, it also depends on, the size of the individual as well, because, a smaller individual, it might potentially be slightly less. But if we're talking about a male, relatively average size male in the off season, I'd probably say you probably don't want to be dipping below 40 grams. There's absolutely no need for you to be doing that. But, so I would say you'd probably want to be sticking at 40 grams for sure. And if anything, I would say like, hey, just unless there is I don't know what the specific reason underlying this question is, but I'd say don't be afraid to come up a little bit more. There's no advantage. So yeah, that's my general first response to that question.
Yeah, so Eric Trexler looked into this in terms of a minimum fat intake, and there isn't like clear, hard lines to it. But from his research, it was 40 grams was like, hey, if you don't really want to be dropping below 40 grams, because when you drop below that, you might not get the best testosterone production, was what he kind of was alluding to. So if you go below 40 grams, you don't want to do that for extended periods of time. So for me, 40 grams typically is like my lower point that I don't really like people to worry about going below. A lot of research, when it's looked into this, and recommendations from that research, has said 20% of your total calories. Now, I don't love percentages of total calories because it's not very specific to the individual and their body weight. It's basing it off energy expenditure, but energy expenditure is more of a understanding for carbohydrate intake, I would say, versus like fat intake. I think fat intake makes more sense to base it off body weight, like you mentioned. So we have enough for our like physical body needs, and get enough essential fatty acids and vitamins and minerals, and enough for hormone production. And from the smart individuals within the industry, often quoted as 0.3 grams per pound as like a lower end to go towards, which I think is pretty fine as well. So I would say don't go below 40. Outside of that, there's no real like rules or musts. You can also experiment with more or less and see how you feel. But I think, as you mentioned, Mike, you're not going to see much difference once you've hit the minimums for these things. When you're in a calorie surplus, it's not probably going to make too much difference. I used to like this insulin hypothesis, or what did I used to call it? High carbohydrate hypothesis of like, hey, if you maximize carbohydrates, then you get a stronger insulin response. It's anti-catabolic, therefore maybe anabolic, and it's less likely to be stored as fat. And so maybe there's some superiority there. But ultimately, energy balance is what determines that. And we have no strong evidence to suggest this. Is also not an amount of insulin that's anything to kind of really worry about. So I would say, yeah, his intake sounds completely reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we have actually covered that question before. So we probably
Yeah,
don't want to spend too much longer on it.
for sure. But Progress Forwards asks, what's your approach to maximizing intensity in terms of effort within a set?
So my very like black and white rational brain just goes to maximizing intensity is taking it to failure or past failure. Like, so you have a spot who can help you do some spotted reps, or you do some length and partials, or you do drop sets, and like you completely rinse it. So it's failure and beyond is like maximizing intensity. And then that would be the approach there. The other less kind of formal side or rational or objective side of maximizing intensity goes to like mindset, using music, using ergogenic aids, so caffeine, music, I guess hyping yourself up, doing that sort of thing, finding very emotive experiences in your life and using that as a tool to kind of, again, as a bit of an ergogenic aid, but recognizing everyone has a little bit of a U-shaped curve that's maybe a little bit different, where you can have so much arousal that suddenly you're like so hyped, so full of caffeine that now you can't actually perform. So you have to find that sweet spot for you. So yeah, that's some of the ways that I think about maximize the intensity. And the other, I will just bring up one more, is having a plan. So if you know you're like you with the pendulum squat, you know what you hit last week for 0 RAR. So you know you're trying to kind of basically, without maximizing intensity past failure, you know what you need to hit as like a minimum as to match performance. So you have that in mind going into the set. And I think that's another thing that you can use. And then obviously staying on top of sleep is another thing. So you're as well recovered, having sufficient calories, having sufficient carbohydrates before your workout. I can't think of much else. I don't know if anything springs to mind for you, Mike.
Yeah, I think a couple of things for me are, and this might not be for everybody, but it's almost like you've got to, particularly for, when you are going to 0 to 1 RAR, and particularly for things like legs, you've really got to get into almost a meditative like state where you're kind of really just focused on something. It's this internal focus rather than external focus. So sometimes things that have helped me are, I think about my breathing a little bit. I'm just focusing on kind of my breathing going into it. I think another thing as well is just almost distancing yourself from the discomfort that you're feeling, because sometimes you might just feel this discomfort in your target muscle, but it's like you're not seeing it as good or bad. It's just like, there's this sensation in my legs, but I'm doing the movement, and you just go, and you're just keeping going, and you've got an awareness of the number, but also at the same time you're not panicking either. And I don't know if this is kind of making sense, but again, it's just, I think the main thing here is just that this internal focus, and you're kind of just being comfortable in the discomfort in a sense. And to your point about the kind of, roughly what number to hit, I think to a certain extent as well, more recently I've been thinking of, like, say for example with the pendulums, now that I've been taking things to 0 to 1 RAR, I know how fatigued I feel when I've taken things to 0 to 1 RAR. And so if I don't feel similar to that in some senses, I think I'm off. And I know that isn't always reliable, because many things can impact your fatigue, that day. But if I'd finished the set and I didn't feel super fatigued, I'd be like, let me look at my recording and video of that form, because I want to double check the reps that I got, so to speak. So I think, again, experience in a large part could be part of it as well.
Yeah, and that's circumstance. I would use it as like a target, but don't hold yourself to limiting yourself there. So if you can beat it, beat it. I've certainly done that before. But sometimes, like, I think we've all been there probably, especially on leg press, for example. If I didn't have that, I got 15 reps of this load last time and I just went in blind, and I was clueless to what I'd performed before, I'd probably give up at 10, because it's fucking uncomfortable. And I'm just like, this is so hard. So sometimes, like, especially for leg training, I find having that number to need to work and strive towards when I'm trying to push to my limit is needed, because I will just end up sandbagging. It's so easy to do it because it gets uncomfortable, like you said. But you need to getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is key.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Nice.
Right.
Next question is from our man, Dr. Jared Rice. He says, my wife says my workouts take too long. How can I speed them up without missing out on effectiveness?
So a couple of things. So obviously we've got lots of time efficient methods of increasing, I guess, training density, or, volume density. So things like my match sets, my reps, supersets, giant sets, those are ways of being a bit more time efficient with volume, and being a bit more effective with stimulus. I think another thing is also sometimes just reviewing what you're doing in the session. And like, it might be just a really silly example, but are you legitimately focused in those sessions, or are you just like, you do a set and then you're chatting to a few people whilst you're in the session and stuff like that. And I think, that's something not to discount, because, some people legitimately do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But equally, if you know that, people are, if you know that you need to be elsewhere, it's probably like, is that element worth it, kind of thing, and just kind of reviewing that. So yeah, those are the two immediate things that spring to mind.
Nice. Yeah, so you touched on a lot of the things that immediately come to mind for me, like those kind of intensity techniques almost, but they are in some ways time savers, like drop sets, myo reps, where you have a short rest period to keep the muscle under fatigue so that you don't have to go through those like almost build up repetitions into it. And so you might have to do more total sets to make up for the stimulus, but you might be able to do them in slightly less time. Then antagonistic supersets, I think, are fantastic, or even just unrelated supersets. So I think loads of us have probably done this when you're in a bit of a hurry, is like bicep curls and then, I don't know, calves. It's like, that's great. Or biceps and triceps, or a push and a pull, and having setups for that. And one thing you mentioned in terms of being concentrating your sessions, you could even just time rest periods. I think it was shown like 2.5 minutes seemed to like be the max that you would possibly need to like get the most potential from your training. I would say I think there are times of which you might want to rest longer than that to kind of get the highest quality, but I think you can do great with kind of shorter rest periods potentially. So timing them, because I think sometimes people just switch off and it's like they could go quicker if they needed to. I'm sure we've all been there when we're in a bit of a hurry. It's like, actually, my calves recover very quickly. I can probably go again, or my biceps, or whatever it is. There might be a muscle group that recovers very quickly, and that can keep you on track. And then the other final point that I don't think was mentioned is just limit setup. So
Yes.
are you doing anything that's convoluted within your session? Can you find ways of just things that take minimal setup? So rather than doing, I don't know, one that comes to mind, I don't know why this comes to mind, but at home, if you have a barbell and a rack, you could set up like a belt squat potentially, where you kind of have this quite convoluted setup from home, where you put the rack in, put the bar into the rack, and you kind of do it all. But that might take you like 15 minutes to legit set it up to be safe. Or you could just do a barbell back squat and you're just in there, and there's like limited to no setup. Or again, trying to set up using machines, for example, would just be super easy. So using like a lat pull down machine versus setting up like this iliac lat pull down and having to like weigh down the bench and all of this, whatever. So thinking about that. And then the only other thing is just focusing more on compound lifts versus splitting your body up into more like biasing the lower lat, like the mid lat, and then like the upper back. Think about, hey, just what's a holistic back movement that I can hit things a bit more comprehensively with it versus trying to like bias individually. And then similarly, like maybe you can be like, hey, I've done this much pulling within my workout, so I don't need to do rear delts, I don't need to do traps, I don't need to do biceps, particularly focus on the big rocks. But outside of that, I don't think there's too much else I would say, apart from like increasing training frequency potentially. If you're not limited by frequency, but you are limited by time, then maybe just doing your sessions, doing more sessions, but shorter versus longer, less sessions.
Yeah, that's a great point. I loved those last little bits to that. And another example that sprung to mind as you were saying that is also, in an ideal world, you might do, single arm work or single leg work, but actually for the sake of time, you make it double arm, and it just, it just cuts that little bit of time. So yeah, great one.
Especially things like lunges. They're very fatiguing too. I literally did those today. But they're great, but if you're not got much time, it can save you a lot of time.
Lunges.
Nice.
Yeah. Right. So, im_fucking_nice. uh, Thoughts on hyperfocus on one muscle group while continuing normal training. I've done this for chest and legs for 30 days, at least 4 sets.
So this just sounds like specialization, right?
Yeah.
So hyperfocus could just change that to being specializing on one muscle group whilst continuing normal training. So it's kind of, if we're to use volume landmark terms, you might be at like MEV or like minimum effective volume, or in and around that for a lot of your body, and then take one muscle group, for example, his chest here, up to like its MAV, like maximal adaptive volume, and closer to its individual MRV. And my thoughts on it are that I'm not really sure the relevance of at least 4 sets. I'm not sure what that means. And then for 30 days, that doesn't sound like a very long period of time. I do think if you want to specialize, you probably don't want to like specialize on one thing for a short time, then jump to something else and jump to something else. You probably want to focus on it for a while. But in general, I don't do any like extreme specialization cycles. Most of my clients, I don't think really want or warrant that. And I also personally don't. Like, I've got a few focus areas. I've got nothing like abundantly weak on my physique that I have to like, oh man, that's really weak. It must have my focus. Then everything else go on the back burner. It's like everything is pretty symmetrical, but there are a few things that can go a bit more on the back burner. There's a few things that go with a bit more focus. So I, in general, don't like, similar to diet, actually, to using these diet and training analogies, I don't like these big swings in calories, say like having like extreme refeed days and then very low days. For example, during like an off season, I prefer to have pretty samey across the board. Similar with training, I don't like to have like one thing massively put on the front burner and then other things way on the back burner. I prefer to just like have maybe a little bit more emphasis on some things, a little bit less emphasis on other things. So my thoughts on it, it can absolutely work, but I don't tend to utilize it too much. I don't know if you have anything else, Mike.
Nothing majorly different. I think you've always got to ask yourself those questions, as well as firstly kind of assessing the need. Well, actually, even taking a step back from that, what's your goal? Are you a competitive athlete, competitive bodybuilder? Right, you've then got to assess what the criteria is, and you've got to assess your kind of what you need to do according to that, and your own SWOT analysis. If you're not a competitive and it's just your own personal goals, again, fair enough. But then you've got to also weigh that in the context of, trade-offs as well. And I think, yeah, assessing the need, assessing it versus your own goals and what that's needed. And then I think you brought up a great point of just time. Like, depending on who this individual is, how advanced they are, what their muscle growth potential is, 30 days is nothing. It's just like, piss in the ocean, or whatever the expression is. It's you've got to give yourself more time than that. And
Yeah, I
that's
think
it.
the question is unbelievably broad when I read it. Whenever I see someone say X thoughts, I'm like, oh man, like this could go so many directions. But those at least are my initial thoughts, and I thought your thoughts were also great. I'll ask the next question. Sorry, Ada was like making some weird grumbling noises, and she's like right under my feet. So, keeping up with John has asked, since weight is not a useful metric during recomp, are tape measures a better predictor of muscle growth in addition to progressive overload?
I think it's the way that I would approach this is saying it's not that. I think you'd still check your scale weight, but it's used you wouldn't want to necessarily use one measurement in isolation, or at least I wouldn't approach things in that way. I would use a combination of different things and triangulate all of these different sort of feedback metrics and objective markers that you're using to then see, are we going in the right progress? So I think it's about not necessarily putting one above the other. It's rather using a combination of both to have confidence that, hey, we are probably seeing a bit of a recomp effect. And again, performance in the gym, progressive overload is a part of that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's not that body weight isn't useful at all. It definitely can be. It's just you don't want to use that on its own. And you can use the tape measure, particularly navel measurements. I like navel measurements because, especially for people I think could be recomping, I like to have them in there every week or every other week because it's very easy to standardize that. Human error is so easy to get involved for like chest or thighs, or it's like, yeah, where do you measure? Like, oh, am I like, how am I sitting? Like, am I got my leg straight, or have I got it bent? And like, was I like a third up, or was I over this mole, or like, where am I measuring? There's just how tight did I pull it? Was I flexing? Was I not flexing? Whereas around your navel, it's pretty easy to standardize. It's like, well, I always measure around my navel, and it's pretty easy. It's like putting on a belt. It's very easy. You just kind of put it around. So I do find that to be actually really, really useful alongside scale weight and alongside training performance and alongside like visuals. And I think if you have all of those, then you can really kind of tell if someone is seeing a why's my brain gone blank? Recomp. The issue is because the reason I was making that point is I think sometimes people might try and use measurements like around their arms and chest and other areas, which when you're trying to measure change, unless they're very, very new, the amount of human error that's involved is largely larger than the change that you're trying to see. So there could be a 2 centimeter error rate around your thigh, but you're only trying to measure a 0.5 centimeter change. It's like, well, the error rate is way larger than the change you're trying to measure, so you can't possibly know. It's similar to that bodybuilder at the end of prep where they're trying to measure how fat loss is going, but they have so little fat they're trying to lose that actually the water changes are larger and fluctuations are larger than the fat changes. So it's like, well, the scale just starts to become pretty useless. You have to more so focus on visuals at that point. So yeah, that's my only additional thoughts there.
Yeah, I love it.
Nice.
Solomon.Roskin asks, being a bodybuilder, do you have any specific considerations regarding testosterone, especially due to aging?
Is he calling me old? Calling us old. I do
Solomon.
turn 35 not too long, so yeah. And Charlotte said, since I shaved my hair off, I look older. So I'm trying to counteract it with plenty of anime tattoos and childlike clothing and dress sense. With regard to this question, I don't have any extra considerations for it above any other time in my life. I'm doing everything in my power to maximize health, longevity, and everything in my power. That sounds a bit extreme, doesn't it? I'm trying to do my best for health, longevity, like good testosterone production by not like respecting recovery, sleep, respecting micronutrition, sufficient fat intake, essential fatty acids, omega 3s. I kind of, for example, supplement with zinc. So micronutrients are there, vitamins and minerals are there. Like I'm trying to get sunlight, vitamin D, all that good stuff, things that are naturally going to support the best testosterone possible. And outside of that, it's like out of my hands. If it starts dipping at some point, and I don't know, the doctors suggest like hormone replacement therapy or TRT or what have you, then maybe that's a route I have to consider down the line. I wouldn't be against it if the doctor was like, hey, this is going to objectively make you healthier and better. Then I'd have to be like, well, am I done competing in natural federations, or do I want to support my health and well-being? And so that's really the only thoughts I have surrounding this subject. So not particularly like on this in this regard.
Yeah. And I think the only thing that I'd add to that is, you know, going by how you feel. So firstly, you know, you're following the process in terms of living a healthy lifestyle and all of those things that you mentioned. And then also how you're feeling. Because if you're doing all of those things and you feel off, something isn't right, you know, I don't know, like you might feel lethargic or something. It's like, right. Then you go to the doctor, you get a test or you do a blood test and you see like, right, are you within the realms of ranges? And then you kind of go down that route and see if anything needs changing. So I think that's also something that I would always say is like, right, we're following the process and how are you feeling? If you're feeling good, you're performing well in the gym and all of those things, then hey, life is good. So I think that's the only thing I'd add.
I guess the only additional comment would be, I think it's good practice, but you absolutely don't have to do it to take bloods every 6 to 12 months as a natural like athlete who wants to be on top of everything and just get a general blood panel to see what's going on under the hood. But generally, the time to do it is when something feels off, when there's no reason for it. I do find quite often like people get put on TRT when it's like, well, their sleep is trash, or I don't know, they're shredded, or they're way over fat. It's like if you're a healthy body fat percentage or healthy like lifestyle, you should be just fine. And if you're not, that's when you take the next steps, like you said, in that regard. So nice. I've got one more. Should we get to
Yeah.
one more question? And this is from Jared Blythe, and this wasn't asked in the box because apparently people from Canada don't have access to asking questions. So if there's anyone listening and you're struggling to ask a question via the hypertrophic time chamber, just reach out. You can even email me at steve@revivestronger.com, or you can get in contact with us on Instagram, or even just comment on YouTube, wherever it is. Like if you've got a question and you're struggling to ask it, we want to make sure that we can get to you. So Jared just messaged me, and that's why I ended up copy and pasting it into the time chamber. So Jared has asked, question for both of you. I've noticed as it gets lighter earlier in the day, it's having a slight impact on the lighting for my progress pictures. I've gone ahead and purchased a ring light and black background to standardize the images. Any tips for taking consistent and better progress pictures?
Good question. I think I'm definitely not the best person in terms of, you know, technical expertise when it comes to taking lighting, but I think doing what Jared has done, where, you know, he's trying to darken the room and make the environment more consistent so that he can manipulate the lighting a little bit more. I think honestly that's the best thing that you can do. So outside of what Jared's already done, I think he's done all of the right things, to be honest with you. And just once he's found that, just literally sticking with it. So rather than changing it, just stick with that method. And again, just another thing just to add to that as it's come to my head is having a relatively blank background as well. I think that really helps.
Yeah, he's using that black. He's purchased a black background. Or he's got
Perfect.
a black background. So, yeah, it's like you said, it's just a no-brainer when you can have that set up. Other tips would be having a tripod, having that at a consistent height. If you're using your phone as a camera, which most phones have a easily enough good camera, using the back camera, like back-facing camera versus the front, it's a higher quality, and having that at the same settings every time. So making sure you're doing it that way. That the video is even so good that you could record yourself and then take screenshots, which is fantastic. And then similar times. So if you are doing it like in the morning, having that kind of noted at similar times. If you are doing it after a workout or anything like that, just noting down what you trained, because that's going to be more pumped and that might impact the look there. And anything else, consistent and better progress pictures. The only thing I would say in addition to that is it's really good to have these like standardized pictures. Sometimes I have found that it doesn't always pick up the condition in every muscle when you have a single light source. When you have multiple light sources, sometimes it can just reveal via shadows kind of sometimes a bit of a clearer picture, or it might highlight one side of the body versus the other a little bit. So I do like, just in addition to those standardized ones, just like get yourself under some different conditions, maybe in your gym or via natural light, in addition to just give you the more kind of some different angles and lighting. I don't think is a bad idea, just to give you a few more perspectives. For example, for me, the rear of my glutes never looked in my setup. But when I then went downstairs and I got under natural light and I took a video of them, I was like, oh, there's lines through them. And sometimes, so it can sometimes give you a bit of a false perception of how things are going. So that's the only additional thing. I think, Jared, you're doing basically everything you need to be doing, though, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
Nothing else comes to mind.
It was just a question that came across my mind as you were saying. Do you think it's also because downstairs you've got lighting coming much more down from like the Velux windows, and similarly like in a gym you've got light coming down, or do you think it's just more angles in general?
I don't know specifically what it is, but yeah, in the gym downstairs, like I could see my glutes from the rear, like coming through. Whereas, yeah, with this setup, I still had the light like up coming down at me, but it was just this one light source, and it kind of it can wash you out a little bit, which can be great because it's very like unforgiving. So if you're shredded under that sort of lighting, like a ring light, you are freaking shredded. But sometimes it can lead you to think you're not as lean as you are, and it could lead you to make the wrong calls at times. So sometimes having some additional kind of physique updates in other lighting is helpful. So I did that with Cliff, for example. Like I had this standard setup, but I was like, hey, can I give you some pictures from my gym, because I look quite different under this lighting? And so I gave him that to kind of, as a coach, I always want like more data is better than less. And so if I can get a bit more clarity through some additional things, then that can be great. What you don't want to do is just do gym lighting, just do the best lighting that highlights things. Having that very kind of, what's it called? Not complementary lighting is a good, like standardized, like consistent approach to have.
For sure. Yeah, nothing else
Cool.
to add.
Nice. I think that's it this week, guys. So
Yeah.
thank you again for all your great questions. As I've reflected upon many times, the questions are really good. Like I've said, if you want to ask them, you know where to go. And as ever, if you are interested in online coaching with us, myself or Mike, I think, did you have a few signups this week, or did you have a couple of consultations?
Yeah, I've had three consultations this week.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going really well.
Cool.
Good.
I think I have, 3 people just starting up this week, or they're starting up actually next week, because I've just started them up. And so, yeah, it's exciting to see kind of the team grow. And yeah, if you want to be part of the team, then you just have to follow the online coaching link within our description, and we can have a chat. And I guess we'll catch you next time, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. See you next week.